The enormous chamber fell silent as Commander Zaxistorol stepped onto the speaking platform. His blue-gray scales glinted under the pale light of the council hall. Around him, representatives from 8 different species sat in tiered seating, all waiting for his final assessment. The air felt heavy with anticipation. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," Zaxtorol began, his voice resonating through the chamber. "After 50 years of observation, our analysis of the human species is complete. The invasion can now proceed." Behind him, a 3-dimensional image of Earth appeared, slowly rotating to show continents, oceans, and the scattered lights of human cities. Several council members leaned forward, studying the blue planet with cold calculation. "As you can see," Zaxistorol continued, "humans have achieved only minimal space travel. Their weaponry relies on chemical propellants and crude nuclear devices. Their planetary defenses are fragmented across competing nation-states. We predict total surrender within 6 hours of first contact." Councillor Vexmore, an elder draconian with battle-scarred skin, raised a clawed hand. "And their unpredictability factor? Humans have a reputation for unusual thinking." Zaxtorol smiled, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. "We have run 10 billion simulations. Every possible human response has been accounted for. Their defeat is mathematically certain." On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Samuel Wright stared out the window of his office at the Nevada desert. The morning sun cast long shadows across the sand. In the distance, he could see the massive dish antennas of the Sunburst facility. For 3 years they had worked on this project. For 3 years they had faced mockery from the military establishment. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said, turning away from the window. Lieutenant Kate Freeman entered, carrying a tablet computer. Her short brown hair was messy, and dark circles under her eyes suggested she had worked through the night again. "Morning, Captain," she said. "I've got the latest test results." Wright gestured to a chair. "Anything good?" Freeman sat down and slid the tablet across the desk. "We achieved a 15% increase in energy capture. It's not enough, but it's progress." Wright scrolled through the data, frowning slightly. The Sunburst project had started as Freeman's doctoral thesis, a theoretical method for channeling solar radiation through Earth's magnetic field. In theory, it could create a defensive barrier around the planet. In practice, they had barely generated enough energy to power the facility's coffee machines. "The Joint Chiefs are visiting next week," Wright said. "They're talking about cutting our funding." Freeman leaned forward. "They can't do that. We're close to a breakthrough. I can feel it." Wright had heard this before, but something in Freeman's voice made him look up. "What aren't you telling me?" "I've been running simulations based on a new approach," she said. "Instead of trying to create a shield, what if we focus on disrupting external energy systems? Any advanced propulsion system would have specific frequencies. If we could create a resonance wave." Wright raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about a weapon." "I'm talking about defense," Freeman corrected. "Something that could temporarily disable rather than destroy. But we'd need to redirect resources from the shield prototype." Wright was silent for a moment. "How sure are you this could work?" Freeman met his gaze. 80%, maybe." Wright nodded slowly. "Do it, but keep it quiet until we have something to show." Back in the council chamber, Admiral Kelthax of the Zentari was presenting the invasion plan. His tentacled face remained expressionless as he detailed the attack sequence. "Our fleet will emerge from hyperspace behind their moon, masking our approach. First wave will neutralize their satellite network. Second wave targets military installations. We expect their governments to begin surrender negotiations within the first hour." Councillor Ulvax, a Morgolian known for his economic expertise, raised a hand. His translucent skin pulsed with different colors as he spoke. "What about resource extraction? Humans have depleted many of their planet's natural elements. Their technological level suggests they have only accessed surface resources," Kelthax replied. "Deep crust and oceanic shelf mining will yield significant heavy metals. Additionally, the humans themselves represent a valuable biological resource." Murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. The Council had built its empire by harvesting resources from conquered worlds. Earth would be just another acquisition. 3 days later, Kate Freeman stood in the sunburst control room, surrounded by computer screens and worried technicians. Outside, through the reinforced windows, the desert night was clear and still. Above them, stars twinkled innocently. "You've been at it for 36 hours, Wright said, placing a cup of coffee next to her keyboard. "Maybe you should rest." Freeman shook her head, not looking up from her calculations. "Something's not right with the energy distribution. We're losing too much in the conversion process." Wright was about to respond when an alert sounded from the communication station. A young technician named Ryan Clark looked up from his screen, face pale. "Captain, we're getting a priority call from NASA's Arecibo facility." Wright frowned. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a woman with curly black hair and wide, alarmed eyes. The ID tag identified her as Angela Martinez, senior astronomer. "Captain Wright, I'm told you're the contact for unusual space phenomena." Wright stepped closer to the screen. "That's correct, Dr. Martinez. What have you observed?" Martinez took a deep breath. "Approximately 30 minutes ago, we detected multiple large objects emerging from what appears to be a spatial distortion behind the moon. They're not meteors or any known natural phenomenon." The control room went silent. Freeman had stopped typing and was now standing beside Wright. "How many objects?" Wright asked, his voice steady despite the implications. "Current count is at 100 and rising," Martinez replied. "They're moving in formation, Captain. Deliberate patterns, and they're heading toward Earth." Wright turned to Freeman, whose face had gone white. "Still think we need more time for testing?" Freeman swallowed hard. "We'll have to use what we've got." Wright nodded and turned to the room. "Contact the Pentagon and the President. Tell them we have a first contact situation." He looked back at Freeman. "And get Sunburst online, now." In the Council flagship Dominion, Zax Toril watched as Earth grew larger on the view screen. After centuries of planning, the Council would add another world to their collection. Humans would be just another footnote in their long history of conquest. "Begin the countdown sequence," he ordered. "Humanity has 6 hours left as a free species." He had no way of knowing that his carefully calculated prediction was about to be proven spectacularly wrong. President Alan Russell sat alone in the Oval Office, staring at the secure phone on his desk. The call he had just received from the Pentagon seemed impossible. Aliens. An invasion fleet. First contact was happening, but not in the way anyone had hoped or imagined. The door opened and his chief of staff, Greg Miller, entered with a group of serious-faced men and women in military uniforms and suits. "Mr. President, the National Security Council is assembled in the Situation Room," Miller said, "and NASA has confirmed the objects. They're definitely artificial and moving with purpose." Russell stood up, straightening his tie. "What about our defense options?" "Limited," said a gray-haired woman in an Air Force uniform. "General Diane Bailey, sir. Our satellites are already experiencing interference. We've scrambled jets, but if these craft can travel between stars..." She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood what she meant. Earth's most advanced fighter jets would be like biplanes against modern bombers. "There is one other option," Miller said quietly. "Project Sunburst." Russell frowned. "The solar shield? I thought that was theoretical." "It is," Bailey admitted. "But Captain Wright and Lieutenant Freeman have been making progress. They're bringing it online now." "A prototype that's never been tested against a fleet of alien ships," Russell muttered. "Not great odds." "No, sir," Bailey agreed. "But right now it's the only card we haven't played." At the Sunburst facility, the control room buzzed with frantic activity. Scientists and technicians ran from station to station, making adjustments and checking readings. In the center of it all, Kate Freeman worked furiously at her main console, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Power levels at 60%, called out Ryan Clark from his station. "That's the best we can do without overloading the grid." Freeman didn't look up. "It'll have to be enough." "Sam, are the satellite relays in position?" Wright nodded, pressing his phone closer to his ear. "Just got confirmation. All 6 are aligned and ready to receive. The plan was both simple and incredibly complex. The main dish would capture and concentrate solar radiation, then beam it to a network of satellites. Those satellites would use Earth's magnetic field to create a resonance wave that, in theory, might disrupt the quantum drives of any advanced spacecraft. In theory, none of it had been tested at full scale. "We've got movement," Angela Martinez's voice came through the speakers. She was still monitoring from Arecibo. "The fleet is spreading out. Some are heading toward our satellite network." Wright turned to Freeman. "How much longer?" 10 minutes, she replied, sweat beading on her forehead. "Maybe 8 if we skip the final calibration checks." "We might not have 8 minutes," Wright said. In orbit above Earth, the alien fleet moved with perfect coordination. Smaller scout ships detached from the main fleet, targeting communication satellites with precision. Energy beams. One by one, Earth's eyes and ears in space went dark. On the bridge of the Dominion, Admiral Kelthax watched with satisfaction. First phase proceeding as planned. Minimal resistance detected. Beside him, Commander Zax Torrell nodded. "The humans are reacting exactly as our models predicted. They've launched primitive aircraft, but nothing that can reach orbit." "Should we respond to their radio transmissions?" asked a communications officer. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Not yet," Kelthax decided. "Let them understand their helplessness first. When the second wave begins, they'll be more receptive to surrender terms." At the White House, President Russell had moved to the Situation Room. Large screens showed the alien ships as fuzzy dots on radar. More concerning were the screens going dark one by one as satellites were disabled. "Mr. President," said the Secretary of Defense, "we need to consider evacuation protocols for key government personnel." Russell shook his head. "I'm not hiding in a bunker while the rest of humanity faces this. What about the United Nations? Have we made contact with other world leaders?" "Yes, sir," replied the Secretary of State. "Emergency Security Council meeting is underway. Russia and China have also raised their alert levels, but they're waiting to see what happens." "And what about our attempts to communicate with the aliens?" "We're broadcasting peace messages on all channels, but no response yet." Russell took a deep breath. "Keep trying, and get me an update from Sunburst." At the Nevada facility, Freeman had made a decision. "We're skipping final checks. Ryan, begin the power-up sequence." Outside, the massive dish antenna began to hum as it drew power from the grid. Lights dimmed throughout the facility as electricity was diverted to the main array. "Power at 70%, Clark called. 75, 80. Wright stood by Freeman's station. "Will it be enough?" She didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the screens. Initiating stage 1, capturing solar radiation. The dish outside tilted toward the sun, its surface shimmering as it began to collect and concentrate energy. Temperature gauges climbed rapidly. "Stage 1 stable," Freeman announced. "Moving to stage 2, satellite relay activation." In space, the 6 small satellites they had positioned over the past year began to glow with transferred energy. The alien fleet focused on disabling Earth's military and communication satellites hadn't paid them any attention. Aboard the Dominion, an alarm suddenly sounded. "Admiral," called a sensor officer, "we're detecting an unusual energy buildup from the planet's surface." Kelthax turned sharply. "What kind of energy?" "Unknown, sir. It appears to be solar radiation, but concentrated and modulated in a way I've never seen." Zax Torrell stepped forward, suddenly alert. "Where is it coming from?" The officer highlighted a location on the global map. "A facility in the western region of their North American continent." "Target it immediately," Zax Torrell ordered. "Launch. Kinetic strike." "Belay that," said Kelthax, raising a hand. "It's likely just an attempt at communication or scanning. Their technology isn't advanced enough to harm our ships." In the Sunburst control room, Freeman's hands were steady as she entered the final commands. Stage 3 initiating, creating resonance wave. The room filled with a high-pitched whine as the system pushed to its limits. Warning lights flashed across all the control panels. "Power fluctuating," Clark warned. "The grid can't handle this load much longer." Freeman ignored him. synchronizing with Earth's magnetic field. Now. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the screens tracking the alien fleet showed something unexpected. The organized patterns of movement began to falter. "What's happening?" Wright asked, leaning closer to the monitor. Martinez's excited voice came through the speakers from Arecibo. "They're stopping. The ships are just stopping in their tracks." Freeman looked up, a mix of disbelief and hope on her face. "It's working. The resonance wave is affecting their propulsion systems." High above Earth, the mighty invasion fleet of the Galactic Council was in chaos. Ship after ship lost power, their quantum drives disrupted by the unexpected resonance wave surging through space. On the Dominion's bridge, emergency lights flashed as the main power failed. Admiral Kelthax gripped his command chair as the massive flagship drifted helplessly. "Impossible," Zaxteral whispered, staring at the failing systems. They couldn't have known our technology's weakness. But they hadn't known. They had simply tried something no one had thought of before. And in doing so, humanity had just shocked the galaxy. The Sunburst control room erupted in cheers. Technicians hugged each other. Ryan Clark pumped his fist in the air. Kate Freeman sat motionless at her station, her eyes fixed on the screens showing hundreds of alien ships now drifting powerless in Earth's orbit. "It actually worked," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Samuel Wright placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Kate." She shook her head. "We got lucky. The resonance wave affected their drives more than I predicted, but it won't last forever." "How long?" Wright asked. Freeman checked her readings. "The effect will start to fade in about 6 hours as the wave dissipates. If they have backup systems, maybe sooner." Wright nodded and turned to address the room. "Listen up, everyone. We've won the first round, but this isn't over. I need constant monitoring of those ships. Any sign they're powering up again, I want to know immediately." He pulled out his phone. "I need to update the president." In the White House Situation Room, President Russell and his advisors watched the satellite feeds with amazement. The alien fleet hung motionless above Earth like insects trapped in amber. "Sunburst worked," Russell said, his voice filled with wonder. "They actually did it." General Bailey nodded, her expression still serious. "For now, but we need to use this time wisely. Once they recover, they'll be angry." The Secretary of State leaned forward. "Mr. President, this gives us a chance for diplomacy. If we can establish communication while they're vulnerable, maybe we can avoid further conflict." Russell considered this. "Agreed. Get our best linguists and first contact specialists on it. Use every broadcast method we have. And someone find out if we can get a team up to one of those ships." Aboard the Dominion, the emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across the bridge. Admiral Kelthax floated near his command chair, the artificial gravity disabled to conserve power. Around him, his crew worked frantically to restore systems. "Report," he demanded. A Zentari engineer pushed himself through the air toward the Admiral. "Main power is out. Quantum drives are completely offline. Life support is running on backup power, which will last approximately 20 days. Communications are limited to short range only." "And the rest of the fleet?" "All ships report. Similar conditions. The smaller vessels are worse off. Some have only hours of life support remaining." Kelthax turned to Commander Zaxteral, who drifted nearby. "How did this happen? You assured the Council their technology was primitive." Zaxteral's scales had turned a pale gray, a sign of extreme stress among his species. "It was primitive. This shouldn't have been possible. They must have had help." "From whom?" "We are the most advanced civilization in this sector." Before Zaxteral could respond, a communications officer called out, "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the planet. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies in thousands of different languages." "What are they saying?" Kelthax asked. "It appears to be peace offerings. They're requesting dialogue." Kelthax and Zaxteral exchanged glances of disbelief. "They disable our entire fleet," Kelthax said slowly, "proving they could have destroyed us outright. And then they ask for peace?" For the first time in his long career of conquest, Admiral Kelthax felt something he had never expected to feel toward a lesser species: respect. Back at the Sunburst facility, Kate Freeman was explaining the situation to a group of government officials who had arrived by helicopter. "The wave disrupts the quantum field that their drives operate on," she said, pointing to diagrams on a screen. "It's like throwing sand into a machine. It doesn't destroy it, but it stops it from working properly." "And you developed this technology specifically to combat alien invasion?" asked a skeptical man in a dark suit. Freeman laughed, the sound slightly hysterical from exhaustion. "No, of course not. We were trying to create a defensive shield against missiles and asteroids. The resonance effect was a side benefit we discovered accidentally. We never even imagined it would work against alien technology." Wright stepped forward. "What Lieutenant Freeman is saying is that humanity just got very, very lucky. We happened to develop the exact right countermeasure without even knowing what we were countering." "But can you maintain it?" asked another official. "Keep them disabled permanently?" Freeman shook her head. "The system was never designed to run continuously. We're already seeing power fluctuations and component failures, and generating the wave requires enormous energy. We've drained power from 6 states just for this first burst." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Their miracle had an expiration date. Across the globe, humans reacted to the news of alien visitors with a mixture of fear, awe, and determination. Streets in major cities emptied as people stayed home, glued to television screens and internet feeds. Military forces worldwide mobilized, though everyone understood the futility of conventional weapons against such advanced technology. In some places, panic led to looting and chaos. In others, people gathered in churches, mosques, temples, and open spaces, praying or simply seeking community in this moment of species-wide crisis. Scientists and engineers worldwide dropped everything, focusing their efforts on understanding and potentially reproducing the sunburst effect. Data from the Nevada facility was shared freely across former national and ideological boundaries. For perhaps the first time in human history, the entire species worked together toward a single goal: survival. In orbit, something unexpected was happening aboard the alien ships. The Council species had never faced defeat, especially not from a primitive civilization. Their entire worldview was built around their technological superiority. Now forced to confront a different reality, conversations long suppressed began to emerge. On the Dominion, a junior officer approached Admiral Kelthax cautiously. "Sir, we've translated enough of their messages to understand their basic intent. They're not demanding surrender. They're inviting dialogue." "Of course they are," Zaxteral said bitterly. "They're extending the hand of friendship while holding a knife behind their back. It's what any conqueror would do." The junior officer hesitated. "With respect, Commander, that's not what our cultural analysis suggests. Their broadcasts contain no ultimatums, no threats. Multiple independent sources are sending similar messages. They seem genuinely interested in peaceful contact." Kelthax studied the officer thoughtfully. "You find this behavior unusual?" "By Council standards, yes, Admiral. When the Zentari defeated the Morgolians, we demanded their complete surrender. When we defeated the Draconians, we did the same. The humans have us completely at their mercy, yet they offer conversation instead of commands." For the first time, since the sunburst had activated, Admiral Kelthax felt something new: curiosity. Perhaps these humans were more interesting than the Council had believed. "Prepare a response," he ordered. "Tell them we are willing to talk." 3 hours after the activation of Sunburst, a historic meeting was arranged. The United Nations Security Council chamber in New York had been chosen as the location. President Russell insisted that the first face-to-face contact between humans and aliens should happen on Earth, not on the aliens' ships. It was a small but important show of strength. Security was tight. Armed soldiers lined the walls. Scientists with radiation detectors and biological sensors monitored everything. Despite all precautions, tension filled the air as everyone waited for the alien representatives to arrive. Samuel Wright and Kate Freeman had been flown in from Nevada. They sat together near the back of the room, both looking uncomfortable in hastily purchased formal clothes. Neither had slept in over 30 hours. "Do you think they'll come?" Freeman asked quietly. Wright shrugged. They agreed to the meeting. I guess we'll find out if aliens keep their word. A murmur spread through the chamber as the main doors opened. Admiral Kelthax entered, flanked by Commander Zaxatorol and two other aliens of different species, even hunched slightly to fit through. The human-sized doorway, Kelthax stood nearly 7 feet tall. His blue skin had a metallic sheen, and the tentacles framing his face moved constantly as if tasting the air. Zaxtorol's reptilian scales caught the light as he moved, and his yellow eyes darted around the room, assessing threats. The aliens walked slowly to the table set up in the center of the chamber. The humans present watched in fascinated silence. For most, this was their first time seeing a non-human intelligence in the flesh rather than on a screen. President Russell stepped forward to meet them. "Welcome to Earth," he said, his voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "I am Alan Russell, President of the United States of America and temporary spokesperson for Earth's nations." A small device on Kelthax's chest glowed, and a mechanical-sounding voice translated his reply. "I am Admiral Kelthax of the Zentari, commanding officer of the Galactic Council Fleet." He gestured to his companions. "Commander Zaxtorol of the Draconians, head of military intelligence, Counselor Ulvax of the Morgolians, resources acquisition, and Science Director Nevzan of the Volturi." Russell nodded politely. "Please, be seated. We have much to discuss." As they took their places at the table, cameras broadcast the scene to billions of humans watching around the world. Historians would later mark this moment as the beginning of a new era for humanity. "Let me be direct," Russell began once they were seated. "Your fleet arrived without warning and began disabling our satellites, actions we interpret as hostile. We responded defensively. Now we must decide where we go from here." Zaxtorol hissed softly, but Kelthax raised a hand to silence him. "Your assessment is accurate, President Russell. Our intention was conquest, not contact. The Galactic Council has followed this protocol for millennia. We observe, analyze, then subjugate. Resistance has always been brief and futile." A chill ran through the human observers. The alien spoke about planetary conquest with the casual tone of someone discussing a business transaction. "Yet you chose to disable rather than destroy our ships," Kelthax continued. "This was unexpected. In your position, the Council would not have shown such restraint." Russell leaned forward. "Humanity has a complex history, Admiral. We've known war, but we've also learned to value peace. When possible, we prefer to avoid bloodshed." "An interesting philosophy," Kelthax said, "but perhaps impractical. Your weapon, the energy wave that disabled our fleet, how long will its effects last?" At the back of the room, Freeman tensed. The aliens were fishing for information about Sunburst's limitations. Russell smiled thinly. "That's not relevant to our discussion, Admiral. What matters is where we go from here. Your fleet is currently incapacitated. We could, if we wished, leave you stranded. Instead, we offer dialogue." Science Director Nevzan spoke for the first time, her voice high and melodic through the translator. "Your technology is fascinating. The resonance wave you generated, we've never encountered anything similar. How did you develop it?" Before Russell could answer, Freeman stood up. Wright tried to pull her back down, but she shook off his hand and approached the table. "It was an accident," she said clearly. "We were trying to create a defensive shield using solar radiation channeled through Earth's magnetic field. The resonance effect was unexpected, a side discovery during our research." The aliens stared at her. Nevzan's large, faceted eyes blinked rapidly. "You disabled 300 of the most advanced ships in the galaxy. By accident?" Zaxatorol asked incredulously. Freeman nodded. "We got lucky, really lucky." A sound emerged from Kelthax that the translator didn't process. It took the humans a moment to realize he was laughing. "In 8,000 years of Council history," he said when he had composed himself, "no species has ever defeated us through luck." President Russell gestured toward Freeman. "This is Lieutenant Kate Freeman, the scientist who developed the Sunburst system, and beside her is Captain Samuel Wright, the project director." Freeman felt uncomfortable as 4 pairs of alien eyes studied her intently. "Lieutenant Freeman," Kelthax said, "your honesty is refreshing if strategically unwise. Most species would claim the victory was planned." "We don't see this as a victory," Freeman replied. "Just a temporary solution to avoid immediate conflict." Counselor Ulvax, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. His translucent skin pulsed with shifting colors. "What do humans want from this encounter? Resources? Technology? Our knowledge of the galaxy?" Russell shook his head. "We want what most sentient beings want, to live in peace, to learn, to grow. We're only now taking our first steps into space. There's much we could learn from you, but we have no interest in taking anything by force." The aliens exchanged glances, communicating in some way the humans couldn't interpret. "The Galactic Council has existed for millennia," Kelthax finally said. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds, incorporated dozens of species. Never have we encountered one that displayed both the ability to resist us and the restraint to offer peace afterward." "Perhaps that's why you needed to meet us," Wright said, joining Freeman at the table. Outside the United Nations building, crowds had gathered. Some carried signs with messages of peace, others with warnings and threats. All of them understood that this meeting would determine humanity's future. Inside the council chamber of the Dominion, still drifting powerless in orbit, the remaining council members watched the proceedings via emergency communication systems. They had never witnessed anything like this before. A negotiation instead of a surrender. Dialogue instead of dominance. "This changes everything," whispered a Volturi, counselor, her crystalline form shimmering with unease. Indeed it did. Across the galaxy, on worlds long subjugated by the Council, news began to spread through hidden resistance networks. A primitive species had stood against the invincible fleet. The myth of Council invulnerability had been shattered in minutes, and, now the most shocking development of all, the Council was talking, not conquering. Something new had entered the galactic stage. Hope. 1 week after the first meeting at the United Nations, Earth had changed forever. Temporary embassies for the Galactic Council species had been established in major cities. Teams of human scientists worked alongside alien engineers to repair the damaged fleet. The sunburst effect had faded as predicted, but rather than resuming their attack, the Council had chosen a different path. In a garden outside the newly established Zentari Embassy in Geneva, Kate Freeman sat across from Science Director Nevzan. The alien's crystalline form sparkled in the sunlight as she manipulated a holographic display between them. "Your understanding of quantum field manipulation is remarkable for your technological level," Nevzan said, "especially considering you developed it accidentally." Freeman smiled. "Humans have a long history of stumbling into discoveries. Penicillin, X-rays, microwave ovens. Some of our most important advances came from accidents or mistakes." "Fascinating." Nevzan's faceted eyes shifted color with her mood. "The Council relies on methodical research and centuries of accumulated knowledge. The idea of valuing accidents seems inefficient." "Maybe," Freeman agreed. "But it means we look at problems differently. We try things that might seem illogical because, well, sometimes they work." Nearby, Samuel Wright was engaged in a similar conversation with Commander Zax Torrell, whose attitude had softened considerably since their first meeting. "Your military structures puzzle me," Zax Torrell admitted. "You have multiple independent forces rather than a unified command. How do you maintain efficiency?" Wright shrugged. "It's messy sometimes, but different perspectives lead to innovation. If everyone thinks the same way, you miss opportunities and develop blind spots." Zax Torrell's scales shifted slightly. What Wright had learned was the draconian equivalent of a thoughtful frown. "The Council has operated under unified doctrine for millennia. Perhaps this explains why your sunburst technology caught us so unprepared. We had become predictable." At the main negotiating table, President Russell and other world leaders sat with Admiral Kelthax and senior Council representatives. The discussion had moved beyond immediate concerns to long-term relations. "We propose a gradual introduction to galactic society," Kelthax said. "Cultural exchange first, then technological sharing. followed by limited trade agreements. Full integration would take perhaps 50 of your years. Russell exchanged glances with the other human leaders. That seems reasonable, but we have concerns about the Council's history of conquest. Earth wishes to join the galactic community as equals, not subjects. Councillor Ulvax's skin darkened with emotion. The Council has never admitted a new species as equals. It would be unprecedented. Much about our interaction has been unprecedented, Russell pointed out. Perhaps it's time for the Council to evolve just as humanity must. Across the galaxy, the effects of the Earth encounter rippled outward. On Zentari Prime, the Council's capital world, emergency sessions debated the implications. On conquered worlds, whispers of resistance grew louder. The news spread through faster-than-light communications. Humans had stood against the Council and forced them to negotiate. In a dusty tavern on a border world called Krex, an insectoid information broker shared the latest news with his clients. The reports are confirmed, he chittered excitedly. The Council fleet was disabled by a primitive species who had never even left their own solar system. Impossible, growled a scarred mercenary from a species long subjugated by the Council. Truth, insisted the broker. And more, they did not destroy the fleet when they had the chance. Instead, they offered peace. A stunned silence fell over the tavern. For most species in Council space, the concept of showing mercy to a defeated enemy was foreign. Power was to be used, not restrained. What does this mean for us? Asked a merchant from the outer colonies. The broker's compound eyes gleamed. It means change. For the first time in 8,000 years, the Council faces a species they cannot simply conquer. They must adapt, or risk losing everything. Back on Earth, in the Nevada desert, the Sunburst facility had become the center of a new international research center. Scientists from every nation worked alongside Council engineers, studying the resonance effect and other technologies. Ryan Clark led a tour group of alien visitors through the control room, where just days earlier they had saved the planet. And this is where Lieutenant Freeman realized the resonance wave could be generated. He explained proudly. We thought we were building a shield, but instead created something that could temporarily disable quantum drives. A Volturi scientist examined the equipment with multiple eye stalks. Elegant in its simplicity, she commented. No Council engineer would have designed such a system because we would have considered it too primitive to be effective. Outside, as the desert sun set, Freeman stood with President Russell, watching alien and human scientists walk together between buildings. Did you ever think we'd be here? Russell asked. Working alongside beings from another world? Freeman shook her head. Honestly, I thought we'd be fighting for our survival, or already defeated. It could have gone that way, Russell admitted, if you hadn't developed Sunburst. It wasn't just the technology, Freeman said. It was the choice we made afterward. We could have attacked them while they were vulnerable. Many military advisors suggested exactly that. Russell nodded. The Council has conquered through force for thousands of years. But they've never encountered a species that could win through strength and then offer peace through choice. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Kelthax stood alone in his quarters aboard the now functioning Dominion. Through the viewport, he watched the blue-green planet rotating slowly below. In all his centuries of service to the Council, he had never failed a conquest mission. He should have felt shame. Instead, he felt something entirely different, hope. A signal chimed indicating an incoming communication from the Council homeworld. The Supreme Leaders had finally reached a decision about Earth. Kelthax straightened his uniform and accepted the call. The holographic image of the High Council materialized before him. Representatives of the 8 founding species, their expressions grave. Admiral, began the eldest member, we have reviewed your reports on the humans. The Council has existed for 8 millennia, conquering and absorbing hundreds of species. Never before have we encountered one like this. Kelthax waited silently for their verdict. The humans' technology surprised us, continued the elder. But their philosophy is even more unexpected. They had the power to destroy our fleet and chose restraint. Such thinking is alien to us, another council member spoke. We face a choice. Attempt to conquer Earth again with a larger fleet, or adapt our own approach. The Elder's ancient eyes fixed on Kelthax. The council has voted. Earth will be offered membership as an equal, not a subject. Their representatives will join our deliberations. Their perspectives will inform our decisions. Kelthax bowed his head, hiding his satisfaction. A wise decision, Excellencies. The galaxy changes today, Admiral, the Elder said. And perhaps, after 8,000 years, it changes for the better. As the transmission ended, Kelthax returned his gaze to Earth. The small blue planet had accomplished something no other world had managed. It had changed the course of galactic history, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through innovation, luck, and a choice for peace when victory was in hand. The Galactic Council had predicted humanity's defeat in minutes. Instead, humans had shocked the galaxy and created a new future for all species.